All right, Bronco Sport, let's go. So if you're looking at a Bronco Sport, you're probably comparing this to a few other unibody vehicles in the Jeep lineup. That's a podcast. But also the Ford Escape, which ironically, when I look at the Ford Bronco Sport, I see the old 2012 era, I believe it was last year, Ford Escape, a boxy design not to be confused with the proper Bronco. This is the Heritage Edition. Let's go for a drive and see what it's all about. So the Sport Heritage, like I said, it takes on a lot of what the older Escapes used to look like. It's a boxy design, a more muscular, much better looking design than the new Escape, which kind of over the last 10 years has become a lot more rounded and smoothed off. The Heritage Edition, as you can see, it looks completely, well, not completely different, but it is in the center of the Bronco Sport lineup, and it comes with mostly kind of aesthetic changes, but a few other options that you are able to spec on the Heritage. So upon first glance, you do get the red and white Bronco grille up there, which combined with this Alto blue metallic that this one's been spec'd in, red, white, and blue, right? America. I think it looks great. It definitely looks a lot better than the Escape. And it has a few kind of cues from the real Bronco, because let's not get this confused with the proper Bronco, which we'll get to at the end of the video if you guys want to stick around. It's in the middle of the lineup. Under the hood is a 3-cylinder. Yes, you heard that correctly. A turbocharged 3-cylinder EcoBoost engine, 1.5 liters, very small. It is, in a word, unrefined. And while it does make really cool boost noises, it's not paired well with the 8-speed auto transmission here. So in most case scenarios, it's fine. If you're driving normally, if you're having a conversation, if you're like multitasking, you're probably not gonna notice it, but it has those moments where it's been a little bit underwhelming. It's been hunting for gears when it shouldn't be, and it just doesn't respond the way I want, and it kind of creates this odd disconnect, and there were a couple kind of lurchy moments driving it. What you get from it though, 181 horsepower, 190 pound-feet of torque. Now the torque is decent. That 190 pound-feet is lower down, and that's why we get that turbo spool sound. You do have to step up to the Badlands if you want the proper engine, which you should get, which has 250 horsepower and 277 pound-feet, and that of course is the 2-liter EcoBoost. Quite a bit more expensive for that engine. But of course, if you do want the real torque, you're going to have to shell out that money. Full throttle. Definitely a little bit of a weight transfer in between shifts. I mean, if a positive was going to be, hey, I feel more mechanical feel, I guess that's how I could spin it. But in reality, a vehicle like this that's made for mainly the street, like something that could be daily driven, I want the smoothest driving experience possible, and that's just not the case here, which really sucks, because I'd imagine the 2-liter is just kind of fills that gap of the room that I'm feeling that could be used for improvement. In sport mode, it is a little bit better, but normal driving conditions, it's not nearly as good as it should be. Ooh, Supra. Hopefully you guys can see that on the GoPro. Nice. So a few other things you get with the Heritage model. You get the white painted roof. We get those LED fog lights. We also get 17-inch white wheels. This is what, to me, completes the look. Over the course of the week that I've had this thing, it's been a polarizing issue. Some people love the way this thing looks, some people hate it. Now, while it's not as retro focused as the proper Bronco, this kind of completes the look, especially for the size. It is quite a bit smaller. I think it looks great. Overall, it looks great, and this Heritage Edition, I think, just looks awesome. We also get these special heather cloth seats with the plaid inserts, tinted windows, of course, for the back half of the car, adaptive cruise control, and when you pop the latch in the back, you do get kind of rubberized seat backs that are back there, and that comes with a plastic piece that covers the back there with a few measuring tools, and it can be folded out into kind of a table if you're doing that kind of work. And then as an optional package, this one I'm driving today has been spec'd with a convenience pack. So we get a leather trimmed steering wheel, we get the power moonroof here, which is very welcome. And then of course we get the powered driver's seat, not passenger. You have to go up another model for that. So starting price for the Bronco Sport, $37,000 Canadian. This one, as tested, $48,000 Canadian. Shift, please. Thank you. Yep. Torque, please. All of it. Yes, all of it. No manual mode for the transmission either. So, of course, the Bronco Sport does have, well, Ford calls it 4x4, standard 4x4. This is where the definition's kind of been watered down. I'm not sure what you guys consider 4x4. It is all-wheel drive. However, the lower tier models of the Bronco Sport do not have a clutch pack in the rear. It does not do real torque vectoring, this Heritage model, and I'm not able to control, other than my drive modes, my GOAT modes, go over any terrain. We'll pause, let that sink in. You're not able to actually lock the diff in the Heritage version in the rear end, where you are able to do that in the Badlands and the Heritage Limited Edition at the top of the lineup. But here, front wheel drive as default, and then when it senses slip or if it needs to, and you want to accelerate a little bit quicker, then torque is being sent to all four wheels, but it's all hands off. I don't have any control over it, other than, of course, to put it in, let's say, sport mode. I'd assume it just has a tendency to send more of the torque to the rear more often, but I don't have any readouts or any gauge here that would display that information. And that does bring me to the fact that if you go up a couple models, you do get a fully digital gauge cluster, whereas here we have kind of an analog looking cluster, which is fine. Everything works as it should. Build quality seems good here, while some of the materials are kind of what you'd expect, closer to the base price of $37,000. But overall, ergonomically speaking, everything's kind of laid out as it should, and there's no real surprises. Now, while it doesn't have real torque vectoring, it will do brake-based torque vectoring, and of course brake an individual wheel to help send the torque to the other one. So it handles more like a street car. This, of course, is not as off-road capable as the proper Bronco, but it's a great compromise. The Heritage also comes standard with the optional towing package, which brings the towing capacity up to 2,000 pounds. Let's be honest, you guys. If you're driving a Bronco Sport, if I had to guess, you've probably looked and are lusting after the standard Bronco, the real Bronco, although some would say neither of these are real Broncos, of course. But that's kind of the Bronco Sport's biggest uphill battle, is because they called it the Bronco, and of course on the steering wheel here we have the Bronco logo, so naturally you want to compare it to the standard Bronco. Also, the view out of the hood, I really do love the view out of the hood, and it gets looks. Now, of course, when compared to the new Escape, it has way more off-road capability. So just as a quick comparison, of course, it does have greater ride height. It has a wider track width than the Escape. It also, of course, has different dampers and springs. So, and approach and departure angle comes with that, of course. So it just really depends, those two vehicles, whether or not you kind of want a better on-road daily driver experience with a more sleek design that kind of blends in, versus The Heritage model, especially here, which stands out in the segment, it positions itself not really as a direct comparison to the Bronco, but more as an off-road departure from the Escape. Kind of just doesn't really growl either, it kind of grumbles. I've heard some great 3-cylinders. I used to have a Suzuki Forza 3-cylinder turbo. That thing was a riot, very fun. Of course, the GR Corolla 3-cylinders. You can make a decent 3-cylinder, so that's what kind of hurts it more. I know what's possible here. It does have enough torque, and the handling is okay. Like I said, a little bit wider than the Escape, so it does have a little bit more grip there. But it rides nice, it's smooth, and it's comfortable. Okay, so let's talk first about fuel economy, then we'll get into pricing, and I'm gonna compare this to a couple vehicles and maybe make a few of you a bit uncomfortable if you've already purchased something. Oh, that thing is that a grasshopper? Get out of there, buddy. Okay, well, gives us an excuse to look at the hood, I guess. Fly away, my friend. Okay, he's gone. Combined 8.9 liters per 100 kilometers, which is about 26 miles per gallon. I've been getting right about that. Actually, I haven't done a whole lot of highway, and I was sitting about 8.6 right up until I started driving today. But let's get to the meat of it, okay? $48,000 for the one that's sitting in front of me today. What can you get for that? With the Mazda CX-50. I love that vehicle. It's a great on-road and off-road SUV, but for the price, if you were to spec the CX-50 for $48,000, which yes, gets you the turbo engine, that's the big thing, 256 horsepower, 320 pound-feet of torque, 320 pound-feet of torque versus 190 here for the same price, right? That alone, okay? Let's go down the list because, and I'm not doing this to sway you away from the Bronco Sport because it does have some key highlights that I'll get to in a second, but these are just facts, you guys. So let's keep going down. Towing capacity with the turbo engine on the CX-50, 3,500 pounds. Here, like I mentioned, 2,000 pounds. Things like the heated steering wheel, ventilated seats, you don't get here, but you do get for the same price on the CX-50. But here, what we do get is, of course, a better approach angle, a better departure angle. We do have a little bit more ground clearance here versus the CX-50. So it really depends what you want to do with the vehicle, right? This is a little bit more catered to the off-road crowd versus the CX-50 comes, again, another thing with a 360 camera for the same price, whereas this does not. So it really depends on what you're going to be doing with the vehicle. The CX-50, I enjoy driving that way more as a street vehicle than this. Of course, this has a little bit more headroom and stuff like that, but it really comes down to preference. Now, let's talk about the normal Bronco. Can you get a standard, proper-sized Bronco for $48,000? Yeah, base price with the two-door Bronco, so not a direct comparison, a lot less practical, of course, starts at $47,000 Canadian. With destination, it's about $1,000 more than this. But what you do get with the standard Bronco is even more off-road features. So whereas the CX-50 brings you closer to a more comfortable street SUV with slightly less ground clearance, the standard Bronco, even in base trim, brings you way closer to a fully fledged off-road kind of second vehicle, let's say, if you go with the two-door. And of course, you're able to, in the standard Bronco, base Bronco, control your two-speed transfer case and a locking differential. And you can spec it with a manual transmission. So I just thought I'd leave you guys with that because the Bronco Sport Heritage kind of slots itself right in the middle of the base standard Bronco and the CX-50 or the Ford Escape. So, all right, you guys, thanks for watching. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Some exciting cars coming up, a little bit more exciting than the Bronco Sport, but I've been interested in it. So see you soon.